Hi, welcome to the Atria webinar. So this is a monthly webinar where I kind of go over a random thing in the product that you might not heard much about. And then I'm free to kind of open at any questions that you might have about the platform or new features or what's kind of coming. So let's jump into it. So what's the job runner? So the main purpose of the Atria job runner was for the kind of PSA billing integration tools. So it's to kind of set up, execute, and schedule batch processes. So if you've got another cron job runner or something like Windows Task Scheduler that you're doing a bunch of kind of scheduled tasks with, this is kind of a good, easy replacement for that. So we obviously integrate with the three main PSA tools, but we also have jobs to kind of run PowerShell-based jobs. So if you need to run a task directly on a provisioning server, you kind of have that capability. And we have, I think in version 15.5, we now have an Atria database maintenance job. So that kind of cleans up the logs, does what it needs to do to keep your Atria running smoothly and not having issues or slowness. So that's pretty cool. So I guess the key features of the job runner is to have like a centralized location, which you can schedule and manage batch processes with. So it's super configurable on the kind of times you would run it or what it runs. So that's all through cron jobs. We do have documentation on cron jobs because we found it a bit confusing. So it basically enables you to run processes on demand via the kind of interface. There's very customized logging, so you can kind of create your own logging in your scripts of verbose or information or error, and they all get reported differently. We also have the availability to store secrets, such as API keys, for example, if you're integrating with a different system. That's all encrypted. You can't even get it out again after you've done it. So it kind of does elevate the use case of integrating with external systems. And there's quite flexible parameter management in PowerShell, so you can kind of get things out of the Atria platform that you need. So if you need Microsoft authentication to do changes in Office 365, you can get that out. Or even like lists of users for customers, you can kind of get that out within your scripts and we'll handle getting the data for you. So why not use the kind of existing task scheduler? So that I guess that the key thing is definitely the secret storage. So you're not storing something in plain text. You're not integrating with another external system to store your secrets. It's all stored within us, easy to retrieve and easy to use. There's also a history that doesn't show in error code that doesn't really mean a lot, like Task Scheduler. You can easily see the history of every run, what was performed. You can kind of jump into the verbose logging and kind of see the changes that were made or line by line what was reported back. So that's the kind of advanced logging as well. And it's easy to configure and manage without needing to jump on a different server or another program. It's all nice and within the UI. So here's a kind of PowerShell demo of what we're kind of expecting here. So there's a way you can kind of, you choose the task from the dropdown, then you can kind of set all of the parameters, put in some secrets, and configure in JSON your kind of secret. So let me get this up and I'll kind of quickly run through this. Hopefully I'm not going to be logged out. Cool. So here's kind of what the job runner looks like. So at the moment, I've created a script that goes and gets all of the users from Active Directory and just gets a count of them. So this is something that's basically running on the provisioning server. It's accessing another server completely or something that's on it and kind of gets out all of the different values and properties that you would need. So I've got this set to verbose. You kind of put in the path of what you need. You can specify any variables. So these come through into PowerShell as kind of dollar variables. Then kind of if you have a config, so in Atria 15, we've got a concept of a config value or a secret value. So these are things where you can either store something public or privately. And then, yeah, you can kind of get out environments. So what environment is this running on, for what customer, and you could get things like SQL connection strings out or messaging URLs and that kind of thing. So when this runs, we can kind of jump into the last run. So it was completed with 2 errors. So that means we've kind of created an error code and returned it. So what I've kind of done is this is a debug message all the way up to the kind of warnings. So you can see here you can create your own error codes as well, which means it's kind of easily searchable. I've got it outputting all of the kind of variables possible in the script, but the key thing is we've got our user count that was kind of returned. And yeah, so that's just a quick example of how it's kind of gone to AD, got a count of our users, returned the CN of all of the users, which is quite a long string, so my browser's running a bit slow. So that's at a very high level, a quick example of what you can kind of do with PowerShell. But you could extend this to anything or query out other APIs or bring data into Atria with this kind of schedulability. Cool. So if I hop back to the PowerPoint. So yeah, once again, the logging, you can kind of add all of the different levels. You can add your own error messages. You can kind of do what you need to do. And you can kind of, once again, in the UI itself, you can kind of, if I go back to jobs, you can configure on the go if it's going to be verbose logging, debug logging, that kind of thing. So if you didn't want to see everything at once, you can easily switch between the different log levels. Cool. And then I've briefly touched on secrets as well, but this is just a very quick way of kind of storing secrets that you don't want to be retrieving frequently, such as API keys. Or if you don't want other engineers to kind of access those API keys, but still be able to run the job with those keys, this does give you the capability to do that. And then those are obviously all encrypted within our database. So yeah, I guess the kind of some examples of what to do with the job runner. So we've kind of got running batch processes. So if you're retrieving billing data or trying to query out, I don't know, database size or kind of file server usage for their drives or something like that, you could easily, if you've already got an existing script, it's quite easy to plug it in and then have an interface or a way of getting the data out. For machines, if you set up PS remoting, you could initiate kind of an AD Connect sync or running data retrieval tasks across them. Since they're kind of provisioning servers, usually the central way of connecting to many different servers, it's quite a good place to do that. And then we've had some people kind of have an example of kind of configuring group policy, moving servers around to kind of fit into the group policy changes they have for if a server went into a maintenance mode or something like that. And of course, you can kind of configure batch processes like uploading data to SaaS applications or PSA tools. Yeah, so any other questions about the kind of job runner? I guess the most interesting one is probably the database maintenance one that I've got open here. So just to quickly go over this as well, this basically trims down all of the logs tables that you're not really, you don't use very frequently. It then shrinks the database and you can kind of set the retention size and the batch of kind of records it to process at once. We wouldn't recommend you do this if you've never done it before. We can kind of help you clean it up for the first time, and then this can kind of run every week. I think this is set up for, and then you can kind of keep your database nice and clean without introducing slowness and other issues.